Okay, welcome back to All Talk TV, Wall and Grant, and we have a very special guest in the studio right now. As many people know, first I'll preface, the interview by saying this, that it's been in the news. There's been many international news stories about bullying, tragic stories that have really hit the epicenter of public consciousness, and not a moment too soon because it's a topic, bullying. It's a topic that needs to be addressed, and I'm happy to do that right now with my guest, Michael Williams. Michael, great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for stopping by the studio. It's great to see you and great to have you here. Now, we're talking about bullying, and I noticed that you were hosting some events around the city, and you have taken this on kind of as a pet project.
Well, I work with Spider Jones and Believe to Achieve Foundation. I've always worked with young people throughout my life,
Right.
and whether it was at the YMCA or
Right,
privately. And it's not really something that I speak much about myself. They can talk about it as much as
Right,
they
right,
want,
right.
but I do not follow. I normally don't have cameras following me or anything like that as
Right,
I go into their private lives. But I was asked to host an event for a friend of mine, Sandy Graham, and I believe they're in the beaches at the Bonnie Beach Club and Bronny Beach Club, or however it's called. And
After a few drinks, they definitely is Bonnie. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, no problem.
And I hosted an event which was sort of a musical event, but it was also an event to raise money for Covenant House.
Okay.
And she asked me to do it, and I said, "Oh, absolutely." And at that time, I had become aware of the whole dilemma of bullying, but I told a few stories because I was bullied when I was much younger.
Right. Well, I guess that would be a good place to start, because it's something that affects everybody in one way or another. You're either on one side of the coin or the other side of the coin, but it's something that affects everybody. So I think that's a good place to start. Do you recall what is your most extreme example of being bullied? Because people might not readily associate with Michael Williams being bullied.
Well, when I was young, my father wasn't around at that time at a very early age, and I would say probably between the ages of like 8 and about 14. There was
Right.
like a 6-year period in there.
Right.
And my most extreme memory was coming home from school one day, and a fellow didn't like me and my sister. I had an older sister who took care of me, stood up for me, all that
Right,
sort
right,
of stuff. I didn't have a dad around regularly, so the boxing, the football, the sports, all that stuff really made no sense to me.
Right,
really,
right.
the first time I played football, I scored a touchdown for the other team. So there you go, all right? And that didn't really endear me to the neighborhood either. And I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, in a district, Glenville was the area there,
Right,
between
right.
Glenville and Collinwood. And Glenville was predominantly black, but it wasn't all black.
Right.
And anyway, one day I remember being at the playground, and it seemed some big harumph or whatever was coming down, and I didn't know that I was at the center of this. And my sister came in and took charge and said, my brother, leave him alone, blah, 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 blah. I have no idea what I did, or even if I did anything, Back in those days, it was as silly as knock this pencil off my shoulder, and you're talking about my mom and my whole family, and we'll have to fight. What? I thought this was so silly. I mean, my big pastime was studying and learning about music, and books was really my world, and to a lesser degree, music and radio and media and that stuff. So this part I didn't really get that, but I knew what it was, and
So how did you react to that specific
I didn't
incident?
react. My sister reacted for me, and she took the situation over.
Totally under control.
And normally she was successful with that. This time she was not, because the guy was bigger than her, and he was a guy. And I saw my sister get punched in the stomach and doubled over, and that was because I didn't stand up for me.
Right.
I thought.
So, and what was your age?
I would say that was probably about 8.
So this
8,
leaves
yeah.
an 8-year-old Michael feeling what exactly about being
feeling
bullied?
feeling helpless
Right.
to a certain extent, because I really was I was helpless, but my sister, who was my hero, or my sister, and she shouldn't have had to have been, was hurt. And and my mom just wasn't having this sort of stuff. So my mom probably came out of the house, and she'd go speak to the other parents and do things that she would do everything that she possibly could.
Right.
And then I remember having my stepfather decided that, and my mom decided I needed to learn how to box.
Right.
And he was a former
So that's
Golden
how the
Gloves
boxing started.
That's how the boxing started for me. And he was a former Golden Gloves boxer, and I distinctly remember him trying to teach me, and me not really wanting to learn how to defend myself. And it was the last thing that I wanted to do, was to be concerned about any of that. And him holding up, and we had 8-ounce gloves, and when you get hit with an 8-ounce glove, you can feel it. And he says, "Okay, son, just sort of do this." And he was doing this. And while he did that, me being the smart ass that I was, I went right between his two hands and went bop, like that. And that was not really a great thing to do either.
So let's continue this train of thought with bullying then. So you're left feeling powerless.
I'm left feeling powerless. My sister's
helpless.
my sister's hurt.
Your sister's
Yes.
hurt. It's a horrible situation. It leaves a mark, a scar on you to this day.
Leaves a scar on me. Then the next big bullying incident, and probably the last one, was when I was in about 5th going into 6th grade, and I was I say the last one because it was probably the last one where I didn't do anything. And actually the worm turned at that point, because I remember, again, the thing, "Come on, you're going to fight." And I'm going, like, "For why?" And it's like, they're pushing you around, a group of people around you and all that sort of stuff, so the teachers can't see. And then I remember sort of being knocked down on the ground, and the fellow was getting ready to stomp me in the face. And that was one thing too much. And after that, that was kind of it. And I really didn't realize that I was bigger than most of the kids, and had a pretty good headlock. And when I get you in the headlock, that was kind of it. But I decided at a certain point that that was going to be it. Now, it didn't really stop there, because when I went to high school, there were various factions at the high school, whether you were like the greasers or the mods or the this or the Hungarian kids or the Czechoslovakian kids or the Italian kids. There were all these different groups, and you had to navigate your way through all those groups. And there was sort of bullying evidence there, but we had what they called race riots back then. So it got pretty tight. So you really had to learn how to handle yourself, and not not growing up with a dad full time all the time. I had to learn myself how to handle myself, and I used to test myself, and I understood it was a lot of the way that you carried yourself and how you thought your way through the problems. So I tested myself on a regular basis, and I learned pretty much so on my own. But I work in the music industry, in the television industry, and there was a lot of bullies in there. A lot of bullies. Let's not even
get into the bullies in show business, in the media. But I was thinking last night to myself when I was preparing for this interview, and I think there's a tendency in a topic like this to kind of have a knee-jerk self-righteousness, because I said to myself, man, we're really going to do a great piece, and we're going to stick it to those bullies, and we're going to help the parents understand that you just can't have your kids being bullies, right? And then I thought to myself, and I started to go back through my mental files, and I started to take a really honest account of my own behavior, and I realized that while I might not have been a direct bully, there were times when I stood by and watched somebody get bullied.
And that's almost just as bad, is it not?
I think it's great to, as we're talking to all the parents out there now, Michael, who are watching right now on all continents around the globe, I think it's really important to understand that it's just as bad to sit by and do nothing. Do you want to speak on that point for a minute?
Well, I had... I can't say that I had a lot of friends that did nothing, but I'm sure that I did, because when you're in the moment, when you're fighting or you're being bullied or you're preparing to fight, all of those things, which I never wanted to do, you don't notice what's happening around you.
Right,
and I know that I had friends and stuff, and one instance that I'll tell you about that really stood the test of time with me at Collinwood High School, where we had the race riots, supposedly. I went to...
Can I get you to put that on hold, and we actually get right to that when we come back?
Sure.
Awesome. We're going to take a quick break here on alltalktv.com. Wall and Grant. I'm with Michael Williams, and we're going to be right back to pick up his story right after this. Thanks for being here.